specifically chose. Okay, so today I specifically chose one particular verse from the Bhagavad Puran. Very interesting verse. Let me share my screen with all of you. It's a very popular verse too. Okay, if you can see the verse which is on your screen. So this is from the first canto of the Bhagavad Puran, chapter 2, entitled as Divinity and Divine Service. And this is text number 6. Srila Prabhupada would many times quote this particular verse. Very, very famous verse. In fact, this in a sense is also the a definition and glorification of the process of Bhakti Yoga. So I thought we can start our meetings with this, and we will run through Srila Prabhupada's purport, break it down, and bring out some very important lessons for us to take from this. So this is how this verse goes. Save pumsham paro dharmo yato bhaktir adhokshaje ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati. So it says, translation, the supreme occupation or dharma for all humanity is that by which men can attain to loving devotional service unto the transcendent Lord. Such devotional service must be unmotivated and uninterrupted to completely satisfy the self. Right? So let's see the purport. In this statement, Sri Suta Goswami answers the first question of the sages of Naimisharanya. The sages asked him to summarize the whole range of revealed scriptures and present the most essential part so that fallen people or the people in general might easily take it up. So the context to this particular verse here is that how in this very, very special place known as Naimisharanya. Naimisharanya is a very, very special place. It is there in modern day India, near Uttar Pradesh. Uttar Pradesh is the same state where Vrindavan is, right? And so it is said that the entire universe, if it was to be in the shape of one big gigantic wheel, the hub of that wheel, the central point of that wheel, it falls somewhere in that region of that Naimisharanya. So these very, very sensitive, thoughtful, mindful sages and very, very compassionate sages, led by Suta Goswami, they went there with the intention of wanting to perform a particular yajna that will help the whole of humanity. Because when we do any auspicious activity, not only is the activity important, the timing and the location is also very important. Location also plays an important role. So the sages of Naimisharanya, they decided to go to this particular spot, and they decided to do this yajna. And then as they were performing this yajna, Shaunaka and all these rishis, so they were confronted with some challenges. So to help them address these challenges, the wise sage Suta Goswami walks into this audience. And as soon as he walks in there, the sages, realizing that there's something lacking in what they were attempting to do, they wanted to find what is the best way we can serve humanity. And in that context, they ask a series of questions. So one of the first and the most important question, a very pertinent question, which even people today have, is that what is that best dharma for whole of humanity? What is the essence of religion? Because today, this is a hot topic today. If you are following the current affairs, today, past, or even future, 10 centuries later, I'm sure same issues will continue. But one of the common issues that people have is trying to understand, oh, there are so many paths, so many religions, right? Which is the best religion? The conditioned mind likes to categorize things in terms of what is right and what is wrong, what is the best, right? So here, very similar psychology here, and the sages of Naimisharanya, they ask this question: what is the best dharma, the best occupation, and also the best practice? What are the characteristics of that best practice? And in that context, Sutta Goswami, he explains, the best religion is that which is teaching people to cultivate loving devotional service to the Supreme Lord. And he further classifies that the nature of this loving devotional service is it should be unmotivated and uninterrupted. And the effect of practicing that is it completely satisfies the self. So there are three things being spoken of here. What is the highest dharma? What is the characteristics, the two important characteristics of the dharma? And how do I know I'm practicing the highest dharma? You will experience it. You don't have to wait for some external validation. You will experience that complete satisfaction of the self. And this is such an important theme that Sutta Goswami is addressing, because the ultimate essence of all the practices, all the religions, all the traditions of the world is to bring the jiva, is to bring the soul to the point of engaging in cultivating this innate love towards the Lord and everything that is connected to the Lord. This is the highest dharma. And if you see carefully across world traditions and religions, this teaching of love of God is something that is common. If there is any one teaching that is common across all world traditions, the rituals may vary, the practices may vary, the mannerisms, the food, and so many external aspects, the kind of austerities may vary, but love of God is something that does not vary in across world traditions. So Sutta Goswami is highlighting this essence of dharma and is saying that the nature of this dharma should be unmotivated and uninterrupted. Right? We'll elaborate more upon that. We'll see the rest of this purport. The Vedas prescribe two different types of occupation for the human beings. One is called the pravritti marga, or the path of sense enjoyment. And the other is called the nivritti marga, or the path of renunciation. The path of enjoyment is inferior and the path of sacrifice for the supreme cause is superior. So broadly also, if you see, these are the two ways people are motivated towards life. Either we are motivated for action out of a sense of what is in it for me, that is a path of enjoyment, or sometimes people can be so apathetic towards things, right? Completely detached and disconnected towards things, right? That they feel like, I don't want anything to do with this, right? This is the path of sacrifice or the path of renunciation. So these are the pravritti and nivritti margas. The material existence of the living being is a deceased condition of actual life. Actual life is spiritual existence or Brahmabhuta existence, or that spiritual state of existence where life is Sat, Chit and Ananda, eternal, blissful and full of knowledge. Material existence is temporary, illusory and full of misery, exactly opposite to that, right? Something we discussed in our YTTC. This is not happiness at all. There is just the futile attempt to get rid of the miseries, and temporary cessation of misery is falsely called happiness, right? As we discussed many times in our courses, that how in the material world there is only two things. There is either immediate misery or delayed misery, right? So there is nothing called as, it was only a semblance of happiness, but it's only a covered form of misery. Therefore, the path of progressive material enjoyment, which is temporary, miserable and illusory, is inferior. But devotional service to the Supreme Lord, which leads one to eternal, blissful and all cognizant life, is called the superior quality of occupation, right? So there is the path of what is in it for me, and there is the path of what is in it for Krishna's pleasure. And this is a very important self-assessment we need to make every day. How many times in a day am I thinking, what is in it for me? And how many times in a day are we questioning ourselves, what is in it for the Supreme Lord? Or at least what is in it for somebody else? We need to come out of, because if you think about it, spirituality in its deepest essence is about working on overcoming this ahankar, the false ego, which makes us think that we are the masters, controllers, and enjoyers. In fact, materialism is not having money and, quote unquote, doing some materialistic things. Materialism means those activities which are motivated by your false ego. So our whole game plan in spirituality is about working on our false ego, right? And a good way to practice overcoming that false ego is by cultivation of humility. So this thinking about what is in it for Krishna's pleasure is a very basic level, the fundamental level of cultivating humility. Humility is not about thinking of yourself as, oh, I am so less, I am so fallen, I am so useless, right? That is also a kind of a depressed ego, right? Rather, humility is how many times am I not thinking about myself? How little am I thinking about myself, right? Not thinking myself as little, but how little I'm thinking about myself, right? Because constantly the only thought that we are preoccupied is, what are others thinking about me? What is in it for me, right? But sometimes it's important to think about, what is in it for Krishna's pleasure? What is in it for somebody else's pleasure to start with, right? So this is the principle that is being highlighted here. And this is sometimes polluted. Again, this mood of what is in it for others, that others also has a spectrum, and that spectrum Prabhupada is highlighting here. This is also sometimes polluted with when mixed with inferior quality. For example, adoption of devotional service for material gain is certainly an obstruction to the progressive path of renunciation. Because sometimes people tend to practice bhakti out of some peer pressure or popular opinion, or just for conformity, right? Or sometimes to even to gain something, right? But here, as the purport will progress, Sutta Goswami, remember what are the two important qualifiers he's giving for pure devotional service? He's saying it should be unconditional and unmotivated, ahetuki and apratihata, right? So renunciation or abnegation for ultimate good is certainly a better occupation than enjoyment in diseased condition of life. Such enjoyment only aggravates the symptoms of disease and increases its duration, as we discussed. The more we are thinking about ourselves, more we are increasing this material fever, right? At least better than that is abnegation or renunciation. But better than that is, therefore, devotional service to the Lord must be pure in quality. That is, without the least desire for material enjoyment. One should therefore accept the superior quality of occupation in the form of devotional service of the Lord without any tinge of unnecessary desire, fruitive action, or even philosophical speculation. This alone can lead one to perpetual solace in his service. Because if you think about it, Prabhupada is paraphrasing these terms, karma and jnana. If you think about it, the reason why people are attached to doing the right things is so that they gain the right results. So our attachment is actually for just gaining something, that is a fruitive action. Or sometimes people want to, they can be very methodological in terms of doing things, even people approach spirituality and scriptures with a view to, just understand things in a philosophical way. But if you carefully see, the motivation there is not trying to give pleasure to the Supreme Lord, but rather the motivation is more about how I can protect myself, how I can operate myself carefully so that I protect myself from the gunas, protect myself from the onslaught of material energy. Or at best, how I can achieve liberation. So even the desire for liberation, in a sense, is also a kind of selfishness, because you're not thinking about the pleasure of the Lord, but you're thinking about what is in it for me, right? So this ahetuki, without any hetu, without any selfish motivation, and unconditional and unmotivated devotion is the highlight here. So we have purposely denoted dharma as occupation because the root meaning of the word dharma is that which sustains one's existence. And this is a very, very important point, because ultimately, if you think about it, everybody is looking for some grounding in life, looking for some foundation, looking for some meaning and purpose in their life. That is dharma, that which sustains, right? Think about it. We all are looking for a particular path. We are all looking for a way of living and being. We all are looking towards spirituality because we are all looking for some meaning. We all want to lead some meaningful and purposeful life, right? Because that is what sustains us. A life without purpose is like a ship without any direction. It'll just keep wandering all over the ocean. So dharma is that which supports us, which gives us a sense of being. And this, a living being's sustenance of existence is to coordinate his activities with his eternal relation with Supreme Lord Krishna, right? So yes, you may find some dharma, you may find some purpose centered around certain temporary things of this world. Yes, you will find some direction, but very soon you will start seeing a sense of hollowness in that, right? In fact, most quote unquote spiritualists, even spirituality in itself is a whole journey. People go through various levels of spirituality, and they're trying to peel off the layers as they dive deep into the spectrum of spirituality. Even after practice, they all come to this point where even spiritualists sometimes feel hollow in their heart because they have not come to that essence of dharma, which is to cultivate this natural love of God that is there within all of us. Because the real joy is not in being the enjoyer, but in being the enjoyed. This is the constitutional nature. This is the fundamental nature of the soul, right? The more you try to be the enjoyer, the more frustration you will encounter. But, and even if you think about it from a worldly sense also, right? Of late, I've been doing a lot of cooking, and all my students know how many food analogies I give in the class and what kind of a foodie I am, right? But it made me realize how much food can I eat, right? How many chocolate lava cakes can I eat? Maybe 2, maybe 3, maybe 4, right? But at certain point, the pleasure that I will derive as being the enjoyer will diminish. But I can cook thousands of chocolate lava cakes and feed it to people, right? I can cook thousands of gulab jamuns, I can cook thousands of samosas, and that pleasure will never find a saturation point, right? This is the joy of serving. This is the joy of giving. This is the joy of acting from a space separated from your false ego and trying to be in that mood of being the enjoyed. This is the essence of devotional service. That is why Srila Prabhupada, he very brilliantly would translate the word bhakti. If you look at it from a very serious academic sense, from a literal meaning, from a Sanskritam dictionary, if you see, the literal meaning of the word bhakti is just devotion, a mood, a feeling. But Prabhupada would always translate bhakti as devotional service. Service rendered with a mood of devotion. Because the real joy of bhakti is in serving, rendering that service. And that service is unconditional and unmotivated. the moment you have some expectations in your service, you are destined to face disappointments. Right? Think about it. Even sometimes genuinely we want to render service to people, but we do carry some expectations in our heart. Right? And the moment you carry an expectation, the burden of that expectation is going to spoil the mood of your service. Right? And that is why, does it mean one should be, because many times when we hear the word without expectations, selfless, detached, renounced, it almost feels like you're closed your heart, you've become stone-hearted person, emotionless person, right? But that is not the real meaning of detachment. There's a very nice story which I recently heard. So once upon a time, there was this very, very advanced student who was preparing to become a renunciate, and he takes all the instructions from his guru. And on the last day of his graduation, he goes to his guru and said, "So, Guruji, did I learn all the lessons?" He says, the guru replies, there is one lesson in detachment, in Vairagya, that you have to learn, but I cannot teach you that. For that, you have to go to the great King Janaka. So immediately the disciple is thinking, what? I should learn detachment and renunciation from Janaka, who's a king, who's a householder, who's constantly absorbed in worldly pleasures, and who's constantly absorbed in politics and strategizing and money and wealth and all this. I'm supposed to go learn renunciation from him. But of course, he doesn't question his guru. He goes very sincerely, and he meets King Janak after a long travel. And he goes to the king and says, "O king, my spiritual master, so and so, he has sent me to you to learn lessons in Vairagya, in renunciation. So can you please teach me?" So the king looks at him and says, "Okay, today I'm busy. Tomorrow we will start the lessons, but I'll give you a task. Go roam around my kingdom, explore my entire kingdom. And while you are doing so, I will give you this one big giant lamp. Like the traditional diyas, those big lamps, the clay lamps, very, very fragile clay lamps. So he fills that entire lamp with oil and puts a wick in it, burns it, and says, your job is to come back tomorrow morning and hand over this lamp with the flame intact and not a single drop of oil ever spilling out." Because on a clay lamp, if you spill the oil, it shows up, the stains show up. So his job is to bring back that lamp as it, without any stains, without any oil spilling, and with the flame intact. If you don't, I'm going to chop off your head. Now this guy is thinking, what? I came here for lessons and this is like a death threat to me. But anyway, very committed, sincere student that he was. He walks around the entire kingdom with that lamp on his head, goes to the royal gardens, goes to all the social places, goes to the food court where like unlimited number of food was being served, right? And finally, at the end of the day, he goes to his bedroom. He was given a very, very special royal bedroom with beautiful, colorful drapes all around him. Remember, this guy is a renunciate, but beautiful drapes around him and such soft bed mattress with silken cushions. And somehow he sleeps all night looking at that lamp, making sure that it doesn't extinguish. And the next morning, he comes to the king and says, "Oh king, I have accomplished your task. So now please teach me what is renunciation." So he says, "So first answer my question. Did you enjoy the kingdom? Did you enjoy the food? Did you enjoy this nice bed I arranged for you?" He says, "What kingdom, what food, what bed? My entire consciousness was on that lamp that you gave me to make sure that it is running, it is burning, and make sure not a drop of oil spills out of it." So the king says, "Exactly, this is called renunciation. Just like you, even I live in this palace, seemingly in the midst of so much of material energy, but my consciousness is always absorbed in the Supreme Lord and in His service. Therefore, my mind is never distracted into material energy. And this is the real renunciation." So real material detachment is in developing complete spiritual attachment, right? So you cannot have detachment without attachment. This is the paradox that one needs to decode if one really wants to practice bhakti yoga, right? And that is the lesson in vairagya or detachment, right? How one needs to, a bhakta, a sadhaka, a practitioner of bhakti yoga, invest their consciousness in the beginning based on certain principles of scriptures, based on certain rules and regulations. One creates opportunities for themselves to remember Krishna more and more often. And gradually, in an advanced stage, the mind just naturally flows towards Krishna. Therefore, as Prabhupada continues, Krishna is a central pivot of living beings, and he is the all-attractive living entity or eternal form amongst all other living beings or eternal forms. Each and every living being has his eternal form in the spiritual existence, and Krishna is the eternal attraction for all of them. Krishna is a complete whole, and everything else is his part and parcel. The relation is one of the servant and the served. It is transcendental and is completely distinct from our experience in material existence. This relation of servant and served is the most congenial form of intimacy. One can realize it as devotional service progresses. Everyone should engage himself in that transcendental loving service of the Lord, even in the present conditioned state of material existence, that will gradually give one the clue to actual life and please him to complete satisfaction. So this is the secret for happiness. The secret for complete satisfaction, as Bhakti Yoga scriptures reveal, it is not in trying to become the master and enjoyer, but it is to become the servant and the enjoyed. And this is a mood we can render not only towards the Lord, but in the beginning, we can start cultivating this mood with everything in this creation, right? It's a state of consciousness that we need to start practicing and cultivating. That is why Bhakti Yoga, in all its external, so many practices, so many rituals, so many rules and regulations and all that are followed, the essence is about re-engineering the state of the mind, tuning our consciousness from the enjoyer to the enjoyed, right? And this begins, and the most important aspect, of course, is having that mood of unconditional and uninterrupted. Uninterrupted is also a very, very important point, because the nature of our practice, because many times as budding spiritualists, we tend to compartmentalize our life. This is the time of the day when I'm a spiritualist. This is the time of the day when I'm quote unquote materialist, right? But for a bhakti yogi, it's 24/7 yoga. Whether one be in office, whether one be in kitchen, whether one be at home dealing with family or friends, right? There is never a moment when the bhakti yogi misses the purpose behind all their actions. That is how we can learn to tune our consciousness. That is how it is an uninterrupted process, unconditional and unmotivated and uninterrupted process, right? So how and what is the effect of this unconditional, unmotivated practice, right? The next translation we will read under very, very nice verse. It says, Vasudeve Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojitah Janayati Ashu Vairagyam Jnanam Chayat Ahetukam. Because many times as beginners of Bhakti Yoga, especially in this modern age where we are exposed to so many other practices of spirituality, the beginners of Bhakti Yoga will sometimes tend to go through a lot of FOMO, because they see, oh, there are so many things that need to be done, so much to read. Oh, these other traditions are doing this. there's so much of tapasya, detachment, sense of control over the senses, right? Usually this is what we identify spirituality with, a lot of austerity and self-control, etc., etc., or with a lot of knowledge and mastery over techniques, etc. And Bhakti Yoga, it seems too good to be true, too simple, too straightforward. I mean, does it even work? So does this path of unconditional, unmotivated development of love of God, does it really work? So Bhagavatam here is giving a very nice evidence, a solace and an answer to our questions. It says, what happens when you render this Bhakti Yoga? He says, Vasudeva Bhagavati, unto Lord Krishna, whose other name is Vasudeva, Bhakti Yoga Prayojita. By rendering this devotional service, what happens? One, immediately, Janayati Ashu. Ashu means very soon, not after 10 lifetimes. Immediately, one acquires causeless knowledge and detachment. Jnana and Vairagya will come as a byproduct of rendering devotional service. In fact, many practices of spirituality, the primary focus is on knowledge and detachment. But in Bhakti Yoga, the primary focus is in cultivating the love of God. Knowledge and detachment are like the byproducts. Like sometimes when you are, traditionally, before we had electric cookers and ovens and even gas stoves, people used to cook on firewood. And when you are cooking on firewood, and you imagine you are making sweet rice on firewood. So if somebody asks you, what are you doing? Your response will be, I'm cooking sweet rice. You will not say, I'm creating ash. Because when you're burning the firewood, a lot of ash will also be produced. The goal of your process is not to create ash. The primary goal is to cook that sweet rice in the pot. So likewise, Jnana and Vairagya, knowledge and detachment, they come naturally for a practitioner of Bhakti Yoga. And not after many years, Janati Ashu. Why? Because the very nature of Bhakti Yoga is, it's about, as we discussed earlier, it's about cultivation of humility and by consciously working on overcoming their ego. It's not about mastering your senses. It's not about mastering your abilities, not about mastering your mind, not even about sharpening your intelligence. Bhakti Yoga is all about working on your false ego and your core identity as a servant of the Lord. And therefore, as one starts to work at that level, you will see, why are we attached to this world? What is the root cause of our attachment? Our ego. So when you're straight away working on the ego, it becomes very easy to develop this detachment. And the even most amazing and mysterious aspect is, this knowledge and detachment they generate in such a sublime way, without you knowing. Suddenly one day you will wake up and you look back in your life and saying, hey, 1 year ago I was not like this. 1 year ago I was very attached. I used to get easily triggered by certain people and certain situations. I don't even know when I changed. And suddenly one day you will realize, hey, I know a lot of things. Earlier, when you are new to the world of spirituality, every Instagram post we are saving. Oh, this looks good. I should know. I don't want to miss it. Let me save it. Let me save it. Right. And you'll create the different lists of your saved videos on it. And then suddenly, after you practice some time, you will see, hey, this is basic. This looks, I can understand. I can relate with it. It doesn't sound so esoteric anymore. Right? Without you knowing it, suddenly this knowledge, Paramatma will reveal this knowledge, and have faith in that. Right? When you are sincerely practicing, Krishna is present as Paramatma in the heart, will elevate your consciousness and give you this knowledge. Dadami buddhi yogantam. He gives you that buddhi, that understanding, that knowledge, that jnana. So this jnana and vairagya, which is one of the most sought out things in the world of spirituality, for a bhakti yogi, this is like the ash, a mere byproduct. The primary focus is on rendering devotional service in that mood of unconditioned and unmotivated nature, right? So yeah, so these are a few thoughts which I wanted to share today as opening session, the inaugural session, where I thought, let's create the mood of bhakti, because this verse is a very, very popular verse, very most quoted verse by Srila Prabhupada. Whenever you talk about the nature of bhakti, you define these two aspects, ahetuki and apratihata. And those of you who like to memorize Sanskritam shlokas, this is a very, very powerful shloka to learn. If you like to memorize, this is the shloka from first canto, second chapter, text number 6. I'll also post the shloka link in our group, right? So if there are any quick questions or comments, if anybody wants to ask something, add something, if you want to type it in the chat group. Yeah, I can already see some question. It says, does desire for liberation of the soul also selfish reason in this case? Meaning, if bhakti is done in this mode, is it probably not good, right? Okay, I already answered it. Yes. Okay. Okay, great. Yes. If anybody else wants to, you can unmute yourself, raise your hand. I'll unmute you and you can ask questions, or if you want to type it in the chat box. Right. So basically, we will take up different themes like this. So today's theme was on understanding the definition and the nature of bhakti. So this one time, Srila Prabhupada, he was invited to this one Mahasatsang. I think this was in Kurukshetra. Gita Mahasatsang was going on, and so many speakers were coming and presenting their own impersonal views, devoid of bhakti, and in fact, literally the whole event, Krishna himself was sidelined. There was no photograph of Krishna anywhere on the stage. One lamp was put, right? So Prabhupada first question is, where is the speaker of Bhagavad Gita being glorified? You're talking Gita conference, and where is the speaker of Gita? So anyway, while all this, mental speculations were all being narrated, Prabhupada was peacefully sitting in his room, and while listening to all of that, he said, just get some gulab jamuns. And while popping that gulab jamun in his mouth, Prabhupada said, we will eat our way back to Godhead. Right? By honoring prasad, which, by the way, we don't eat, of course, we honor, because that's a blessing, that's a prasad, right? So even accepting prasad is also a very, very important part of devotional service. And maybe in one of our future sessions, we will have a whole class on the theme of prasad. If not, maybe the next class itself will be on the theme of prasad. So thank you, Anmol Prabhu, you gave us a nice topic. We'll talk about the glories of prasad and how devotees perfected their lives. There's so many stories of devotees who have perfected their lives just by eating prasad. So we will do that. So our next class topic is decided. All right. So thank you all so much once again. Happy to see all of you and other students who will be joining from different time zones, maybe watching this whole video at a different time zone. So thank you all so much once again. See you all next time. Hare Krishna.